move on to our last paper. The Andrea Ice, is it Ice? Andrea, who is going to present our last paper. Andrea Ice is professor and director of film studies and production at Oakland University in Rochester, Michigan, where she has taught for 25 years. She has her BA in Classics and Anthropology from Beloit College, BFA in Film, Photography, Video from the Minneapolis College of Art and Design, and MFA in Photography from Cranbrook Academy of Art in Michigan. She also did graduate work in Greek and archaeology at the University of Minnesota. Her art and films are based on ancient Greek language and literature and feminist reinterpretations of Greek myth. And today she's going to be talking to us about a filmmaker's 2020 Iphigenia or Iphigenia dilemma, depending on how you want to translate. And please keep your questions coming. We'll deal with them at the end of this session. So, Andrea?
Okay, thank you. And the issue of pronunciation is key to my film, actually. So I want to thank Meredith, Dan, and Roger for working so hard to make it possible for us to have this conference. And I've appreciated the welcoming atmosphere at film and history conferences since I first presented at a classical antiquity session in 2017, one for which my session chair was Dan Curley. Thank you, Dan. My fellow Beloit College Classics graduate, although I graduated many years earlier than he did. So as an experimental art filmmaker and a professor of filmmaking, Ames is important to me as my academic connection to classics, which I do not have in my teaching or at my university, which sadly no longer has a classics department. My presentation today is from my perspective as a filmmaker invested in revisiting ancient stories, which will be interesting considering the discussions in Sylvie Magerstadt's roundtable yesterday and being in the same panel as Daryl. So my current film in progress that I'll be showing you a portion of does not have any actual visual representations of the ancient past, though I do offer a specific invitation in the film for the viewer to imagine a different version. So I would say I'm probably okay on the accuracy issue. Film and filmmaking are significant parts of my life, and particularly now. I depend on them to keep engaged and energized, thinking and doing. I also have been working with my students this semester to understand that filmmaking can be a creative force to keep us going when we face challenges and frustrations and even grief, and that filmmaking can also deal with all of these through filmic art. My filmmaker's 2020 Iphigenia dilemma is very minor in the larger world of suffering that we currently face, but also largely came about because of the current state of the world. I struggle with the connotations and associations that I never expected would be part of this film. But after leaving at Fallow for many months, I am now determined to finish this film that kept slipping away from me. My original idea was sparked in the summer of 2019 when I spent several weeks on the island of Hydra working with theater and filmmaking students, and then spent a week on my own in Athens, living in an apartment that had balconies opening out onto an enclosed courtyard. While in Hydra, I learned the modern Greek pronunciation of Iphigenia, Iphigenia. The ancient pronunciation I had learned years ago and the modern pronunciation of her name combined in my mind with the contrast between the clamorous winds and waves on the island of Hydra and the stillness of the Athens courtyard and Iphigenia's story, largely as presented in Euripides' Iphigenia in Aulis. While the majority of my film and artwork has been based in classical reception, I have deliberately avoided connecting with specificity to contemporary socio-political issues. However, as I worked on this film, it made me uncomfortable to realize that the filmic centrality of breathing and the way a crowd's incantations functioned as a catalyst for change meant that the number of 2020 specific references seemed to grow with every passing month. My film became weighted with unintentional references. George Floyd's "I Can't Breathe" as his life was stolen from him. Black Lives Matter and their calls to say the names of victims like Breonna Taylor. Innumerable people on ventilators for whom the ability to breathe is no longer a given, and hundreds of thousands who have taken their last breaths due to the pandemic. And then the reality of close packed crowds all speaking loudly, pushing out their breath in repeated incantations. This became a reality, but now dangerous, even at times a truly terrifying one. I couldn't escape contemporary resonance, and I seemed to have gotten enmeshed in the specific. I couldn't find the mental focus to deal with all of these connotations and associations. So I just stopped working on the film for many months. An artist can never control all of the connotations of her work, and someone steeped in the reception of the ancient world should certainly not expect to, only perhaps to construct and frame her perspective. In the last 2 months, I used the Ames call for proposals as a spur to finally begin work again. The script and form of the film have been in constant flux even in the last couple of days, and will probably continue that way for a while. I'm going to show you a rough cut, hoping to hear feedback as well as questions. My film uses many structures of visual, oral, and cinematic contrast: wind and stillness, cicadas and silence, images that fill the screen in miniaturized frames, real-time versus slow motion, voiceover versus sync sound. The voiceover itself shifts between soft, almost hypnotic tones and clearer, somewhat more intense assertions. Some notes before I start the film. I'll show about 6 minutes of it to maybe about half of the final length, basically starting in medias res of the film itself. First part, which you won't see, develops the specific contrast between the still courtyard and the windy island, as I personally experienced it, and introduces the warriors waiting at Aulis. The audio is a little bit more uneven in this cut than I would like, and the music tracks are mostly placeholders, but the core of the film is there. In my final work on this rough cut, I made some revisions towards the end of the film that made me both more comfortable with the vision of the film and more troubled by some of its specificity. I leave it to you, all of you, to make of it what you will, and I look forward to observations and comments on my attempts to resolve my filmic Iphigenia dilemma. Okay, so I am going to share my screen and show you some of the film. And that will be it. I don't have more after you see the film.
I can come close, right?
For Agamemnon, the sacrifice of his daughter's life is necessary to get those warriors moving, to give them their reason for being, to give him his reason for leading. They rush forward to what, for many, is the sacrifice of their lives as well. Sacrificed for Agamemnon, for Menelaus. I first learned to say her name with a tight, hard pronunciation. Iphigenia. I can breathe out before saying it, empty my lungs, and still get her name said. Iphigenia. To say her name in modern Greek, I have to breathe. Iphigenia. It is a lyrical name, a musical name. Iphigenia. A soft exhalation, gliding forward. Iphigenia. She, on the other hand, feels propelled forward until she takes things into her own hands and chooses her death. Heroically, for Greece, supposedly. Helen's name in modern Greek is also more lyrical. Eleni. Not Helen. Iphigenia is not sacrificed for Helen's sake. The men are not sacrificed for Helen's sake. Eleni never asks for any of this. Iphigenia gives the warriors a different task. She has them face towards the sails. She starts the incantation slowly. Soft Iphigenias, nearly silent Iphigenias, great gusts of Iphigenias, a surge of Iphigenias, all of them breathing as one. Will the sails fill with their voices, their breath, while she, of the lyrical breathing name, will herself be able to continue breathing? And maybe when the man-made winds die down, Iphigenia says her name again. If a man's voice can send them to war, perhaps a woman's voice can turn them towards home. Thousands would not die. Iphigenia would not die. Iphigenia. 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 It would have been worth the try. Okay, well, that's mine.